So Mazda absolutely crushed it in 2024. Sales-wise, sales were up big time in the US. Is it all as rosy as it seems though? We're gonna dig into the numbers. I hope you are having a wonderful day here in early January 2025. Today we're going to talk about Mazda's 2024 sales numbers. Through November, Mazda sales for the year were up 18%. They led all manufacturers other than maybe Lincoln. Lincoln had a good year also, but for a mainstream non-luxury brand, they did very, very well. Now, all boats rise with the tide, and in the United States and Canada and even Mexico, car sales in general are up. Now, for Mazda, there is some interesting storylines behind those numbers, but before we jump into those, would like to thank you for joining us today. And if you've never been here before on Beyond the Test Drive, take a look at what we offer here and subscribe. If you like high quality point of view virtual test drives, that's what we like to do. And we also like to provide every once in a while some commentary on the automotive industry. Now, just starting with their #1 bestseller, the CX-5, which has been their bread and butter for years. I'm not sure Mazda would even exist without the CX-5 and how well it's done, but there is a chink in the armor for 2024. Even though it was Mazda's bestseller, best moneymaker, it was down 12% in 2024 from 2023, which is interesting. And sales of the CX-50 have finally broken through now. I don't know if that's because they're able to produce cars out of their Alabama plant a little bit faster, but CX-50 sales are up in the 70,000 unit range right now. Again, CX-5 sales down, CX-50 sales up, so that's pretty interesting. Again, I'm seeing a lot of CX-50s on the road now, finally. The other bread and butter car for Mazda is that CX-30. That is their smallest crossover. Sales for the CX-30 are up in the 80,000 range. I think that was like a 23% increase from 2023. And if you drop down to the Mazda 3, the small sedan and hatchback, sales of those were also up, even though that is their smallest volume. Mazda 3 sales were up, I think, on the order of 25%, but again, that's not a big seller to begin with. But I think it bodes very well with the fact that those cars they've been around since 2019 in their current design, and they actually picked up in sales. We'll get into why we think certain things are picking up in sales, but the big story for 2024 is the CX-90 and the CX-70. CX-90 sales for 2024 were up, and when you combine the brand new CX-70, which is kind of it's a CX-90, with the CX-90 sales for 2024, they have nearly doubled the best year of the CX-9, which is what we're driving right here today. The CX-9, maybe in its best year, sold about 30,000 copies, and in 2024, they have doubled that with their CX-70 and CX-90 sales total together. So I think the CX-90 has been a success. It's had a little bit of a rough start out of the gate with lots of recalls. I think they're getting the bugs worked out of both of those. So I don't have any issues with recommending that as far as a purchase. Now, the Mazda MX-5 Miata is not a volume seller for Mazda. It's sort of been their halo car to bring the enthusiast in, and the sales are down on that a little bit, but I think it's only moving maybe less than 10K copies a year. I'm not exactly sure. I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but yeah, that's down a little bit, but I'm not too worried about that one, given that it's not a big volume seller to begin with. Now, how did Mazda do it? How did they increase their sales so substantially? This is a little bit of a good news, bad news story. First reason, I think, #1, car sales are up in general. I think prices have moderated a little bit. Interest rates are not going up anymore. So I think there's a lot of bargains out there, and there's a lot of deals to be had on new cars that wasn't there in prior years. But the #1 thing, I think, how Mazda has did it is inventory. They have been manufacturing cars, so they put a lot of cars on the lots. And I think folks that are talking to Toyota dealers or even Honda dealers, and they're holding the line on their MSRP or even still asking for premiums, I think Mazda's got a car for them right there. They can take home today. They can cut a deal on that. So I think inventory Having good inventory has been a key for Mazda. The other thing is marketing. I've seen a lot more ads, print ads, web ads, ads in social media for Mazda. They've been doing also quite a bit expensive TV campaigns. There's a lot of nostalgia in that commercial. They show the Miata out on the track. They show a lot of people outdoors being active. I think it's a great campaign. One of the better auto commercials I've seen recently. So we got marketing, we got inventory. Now let's look at the product line. I think the CX-70, the CX-90 has brought people into the showrooms. You always have to have a new product to bring folks in. So they got a decent product line now, even though it's a little stale in the engine compartment. Across most of their cars, they still 2.5 turbo, 4-cylinder is their main staple engine. But I think they got a decent product line now. And I think with like the CX-30 and the Mazda 3, I think you're seeing a lot of interest in small cars again, mainly because of price. You can get base model CX-30s for less than $30,000. You can get base model Mazda 3s for less than $25,000, and they all come with really good competitive features, especially in the horsepower numbers there. So again, I think there's a lot of interest in small cars again. That's also helping them out. But let's get into where Mazda goes next. Where are they going to go? Is they've been very clear that they cannot maintain this increase next year. Even though the CX-50 hybrid is out, that should definitely help CX-50 sales. That's going to bring more people into the showroom. But again, 18% is a lot to ask. I think with the bugs out of the CX-90 and the CX-70, that's going to bring in a lot of folks also. Now, interestingly, or pretty interesting, is Mazda's been very, very clear, and they like to boast about, they have done this without electrification. Again, the CX-50 is their first sort of mainstream hybrid. Again, that's going to borrow that Toyota hybrid system from the RAV4. So they've been very clear that they've done this without electrification. They said there's a very strong desire for folks to just have a good, reliable, gas-powered car while the whole electrical side of things gets itself squared away. Now, the downside of all this. Again, I mentioned incentives and deals. Yes, they were very aggressive, even worldwide, on incentives. So that drove their profits down. I think Mazda even lost money. So they can't keep this up. They obviously cannot keep losing money up by giving bargains to get their cars out there. The other thing that always worries me about Mazda is fleet sales. I think fleet sales can be good in the fact that you can get these cars in renters' hands if you're confident that they're going to like it. The infotainment system is always polarizing, so I'm not sure renters are going to be happy with how this infotainment system works. And then you don't want to overdo it either. You don't want too many of your cars in the rental fleet. Nissan, talking to you, because you can really stigmatize and drive down your used values when they hit that used car market. So I'm not sure how much rental fleet sales were all part of this, but I think they were fairly significant given how many CX-5, CX-30s you do see in the rental fleet. And I've also started to see some CX-90s out there. Now, Mazda is very coy about where they're going in the future. However, I do think in the next couple years, they've been pretty adamant about the Skyactiv G engines, which is in this CX-9, and it's Skyactiv X, which is in the foreign markets, in the European markets, not here in the US. That engine, those engines, the G and the X, are going away. They're going to be replaced with the Z, the Skyactiv Z. Again, apparently a new combustion technology, high efficiency combustion technology. We don't know a whole lot about it yet, but you're probably going to see that and a hybrid system, an in-house developed hybrid system, roll out in a all new CX-5. Again, the CX-5s are bread and butter. I think they've just been sitting back until they could get their North American CX-50 sales up, and then they're gonna roll out a new CX-5 here, I would say, in the next couple years, and you're gonna see it debut their new engine technology. Now, I do not run a car company. I will not claim to know how to run a car company, but a couple things I think Mazda still needs to do. Number one, I think they don't have a big product line, but if you go into some of their models, they just have too many trim levels. And all those trim levels with the marketing, I mean, it's just got to be an expense. I think it confuses the shopper. I think they need to condense their trim levels down to maybe 3 per model. Like the CX-90, for example, they got the 280 horsepower CX-90, and then they got the 340. The only difference is a tune. So get rid of that lower level tune on the CX-90. Just simplify the CX-90, CX-70 offerings. That's just something I find a little frustrating with Mazda. The other thing I think Mazda needs, I think they need another halo performance car, much like the Miata is carrying the performance weight right now. I think the Mazda 3 hatch or the CX-30 is just begging for a performance version. Even though they got the turbo version, if you think of something like the GR Corolla, the Civic Type R that Honda has, the GR Corolla that Toyota has, Mazdas need something similar. And I think the CX-30 and the Mazda 3 are just begging for that, and I think that would also bring a lot of attention to the brand. Now in 2024 here on Beyond the Test Drive, we did pretty much drive every Mazda in the lineup. I'll leave the link right here for you to go and check out the entire Mazda lineup from 2024. The only Mazda we have not reviewed yet is the new CX-50 hybrid, but that is coming soon. So again, keep your eye on our channel. Again, subscribe and like here today so you'll know when we get that CX-50 hybrid review in. Anyway, we want to know what you think. Definitely chime in below. We'd love to hear from you. And have a great day, morning or evening, wherever you may be.